Hello, and welcome to the Hedera Forum, a program made by and for the community and ecosystem supporting the Hedera Hashgraph distributed ledger technology. We're glad you could join us. My name is Jesse Damrow, and I'll be your host. The mission of the Hedera Forum is to provide a platform to explore recent news and developments surrounding Hedera Hashgraph and provide insights from the community in a more in-depth and long-form discussion format. That said, I'd like to welcome in our first guest host this week. He's a man who needs no introduction if you're familiar or have frequented the Telegram chat rooms or have maybe come across some of his videos, most notably the Hedera bull case videos, which are excellent. Welcome, Brandon, from themonetaryreset.com. How are you?
Thank you, Jesse. I'm doing pretty good.
Great. Well, I'm glad you could be here. This just kind of started organically. We were talking in Telegram, and there was a few programs that used to be more periodic but have since been discontinued or maybe on hiatus. One was the Forkless Cafe. The other was recent updates from the Gossip Guy, which were amazing. But like I said, both of those have sort of fallen by the wayside for whatever reason. Maybe they'll come back. But for now, there's kind of a vacuum in the space. And we noticed that as we're talking and discussing on Telegram, the discussions can sometimes be hijacked in different directions based on just the nature of Telegram and how those threads work. So there's a few community members that I really enjoy chatting with and thought this might be an opportunity for them to discuss things and offer their insights in a little bit more of a long format. So thanks for joining, Brandon, and hopefully we can do this again.
My pleasure.
All right, with that, we'll jump right into the first week's topics here. There's a lot to talk about. Yesterday, Hedera released the Ask Me Anything Town Hall with Manson Lehman, and there was a bunch of great questions offered up by the community, and there's a lot to talk about there. We're also going to talk about a development this week that was announced that Hedera's plugin for the consensus service will be live on Hyperledger and Corda, which isn't mentioned here. Another announcement surrounding the Coupon Bureau, a business out of Dallas who aims to update and streamline the coupon industry. We're going to discuss a few topics that were circulating around the Telegram threads surrounding go-to-market strategies, specifically on-ramps. And then we'll talk about some network usage as well. Anything to offer there, Brandon?
No, not too much. It was fun to watch Manson Lehman having fun with his green screen yesterday.
Yeah.
It was fun to watch, but it's clear that they're still engaged and excited, so it's just fun to watch.
Absolutely. All right, so let's talk about the community town hall. I suspect you were live and watching with them as they were airing it?
I was.
Any highlights that you'd like to share with us as far as anything specific?
Well, I'm sure there were some other people that asked as well, but one of my questions was about joint graph, and I think Mance made it pretty clear that they are borrowing or taking some of Hashgraph's technology, but it is. I mean, if the Chinese central bank ends up using joint graph for their central bank digital currency, it'll be obviously a vote of confidence in Hashgraph. Now, it also kind of sets up the aspect of, free market capitalism is Hedera, and we have, the communist side, a Rocky IV scenario. So I can't see how that would be bad, but it was fun to watch. That, and then of course the explanations around some of the onboarding of the exchanges was also another one of the questions I had.
Yeah, I thought those were great questions, by the way. Mance's response to the joint graph thing was incredible. It's amazing if anybody has done any research into the way that China, the cultural business environment there is so much different than it is here, and appropriating intellectual software and any kind of intellectual property there isn't necessarily seen as a bad thing.
Almost encouraged, right?
It's almost encouraged, and if you can take it and do it better, well, hey, that's the real genius, not the invention of the thing. It's the implementation of the things, right?
Sure.
So to some degree, that's interesting. But I thought it was just refreshing, just how candid They always are, but there are times when Manson Lehman, you can tell, Manson in particular, he's a little bit more measured in his responses that are surrounding, certainly things that are surrounding SAFT agreements or any type of anything surrounding CFTC issues and things like that, which obviously they have to tread lightly. And then still, Lehman's enthusiasm just comes through. And when he gets the technical questions and the math questions, his face just sort of lights up, and you can tell he really enjoys giving those responses, and it's just great to watch for me.
Yeah, certainly still excited about it. There's no question.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that one other thing that stood out to me, we'll touch on it later, but they did mention the Coupon Bureau, and some of these announcements as they come out, they don't seem to move price much, and they do garner discussion in the Telegram chats, but they, to some extent, in comparison, go largely uncovered in the broader cryptosphere media, which is another topic for discussion. But he threw out some numbers, and I've been doing a little research into the Coupon Bureau, and that could be really interesting. So we'll talk about that here in a minute.
Yeah. The other thing that I thought that Mance brought up was the 39 council members. He was. I know in another podcast he had mentioned that he was expecting to have all 39 by 18 to 24 months, and I think that one took place back in January. But he was saying, we might go into 2021 with getting all 39. So that means we're going to be getting certainly more than one a month and possibly two a month going into the next 12 to 18 months here.
Right. Are there 12 or 13 now? What's the total? Do you recall offhand?
I think they've mentioned that there's 14 signed. 14. We know of 12.
We know of 12, right?
So yeah, but there's 14 signed. So we know there's at least two coming. And I know that they had been mentioning universities and NGOs as another possibility. So I think those might be some of the ones that are coming up.
Yeah, that'll certainly be interesting to watch out for, and maybe a topic for our next discussion. We'll see. All right, so let's move on to the next thing here. A really big announcement, the plugin. We knew that IBM is a council member, and we knew that Hedera had been working with IBM and Hyperledger, specifically. There's been some news surrounding it, but this week they announced that the plugin for Hyperledger and Corda, specifically for the consensus service or ordering service or notary service, as they're called, is live. And I'll take you here to the website, the Hedera website. And I thought this is really cool. And I don't have a very technical background, but even I can sort of follow this, and they lay it out in such a way that you can really get a sense of how this will work.
Sure.
Which I thought was cool. Do you have any thoughts around this announcement?
Yeah, the main thing with the plugins is it just allows companies to integrate more easily Hashgraph consensus service into their possibly already established Hyperledger blockchains. The one aspect of it is there's a huge exposure there, right? There's plenty of companies that are already building on top of Hyperledger, and they may be already running their own nodes, but it's modular. So all they'll be able to need to do is switch out their own nodes and go to Hashgraph consensus service. And it makes that process really easy for them.
Yeah, that's great. And what do most people use now? Is there's a notary service in that R3 Corda has, right? That's basically sort of the go-to now.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
And I think this would be something that they can easily onboard. And I'm guessing based on testnet transaction volume that a lot of people probably already are doing this. In fact, I think Lehman mentioned it in the town hall yesterday that it sort of proved the market case for it, and that people were using or had discovered a way to basically have the consensus service with just sending small amounts of cryptocurrency.
Sure, with the memo field.
Right.
Or the note field, yeah.
So that's pretty neat.
I think that's AdDAX actually has been doing that for some time, and I'm sure they're going to swap over to Hashgraph consensus service before too long. But it was fun to watch on testnet when I think before Hashgraph consensus service launched on testnet, they were running 10,000 transactions per day. As soon as it launched, we saw it jump up into the millions, and I think it maxed out at one day over 39 million transactions in one day. So there's certainly a lot of testing that's going on.
Yeah, it's interesting. And those numbers, I think, will be indicative of what's to come, hopefully. Um, One other thing, before we move on, that I thought was really interesting is that Lehman mentioned that the testnet has been so successful that they're going to be implementing a preview net ahead of the testnet to further assist developers and let them know what's coming down the pipeline, so to speak.
Because testnets become so critical for the testing that they need to have a test for the test.
A test for the testnet, a preview net for the testnet, for the app nets.
I think when it comes to Hashgraph consensus service, as it regards to Hyperledger, the trade-off is going to be real simple. Is it more expensive for me to run my own nodes and pay somebody to maintain those nodes, or is it going to be better to just use Hashgraph consensus service? And I think the answer to that in a lot of cases is going to be, hey, let's just use this plugin and quickly get this integrated. And then they don't have to have somebody who's an expert on their payroll. They don't have to run the nodes and so forth.
And I suppose that'll happen in due time here as the testnet grows and as people start implementing this into their real world live solutions.
Sure.
And it comes off the testnet, and we'll see that transaction volume shift from the testnet over to the mainnet.
Sure.
Probably this year, I would imagine.
Yeah. Well, I was certainly, and I know we're going to get to it here in a minute, but I was expecting the main enterprise level use cases to start to hit in Q3. But the Coupon Bureau, that's a bona fide, enterprise use case. When you look at the numbers, and it sounds like you've done some of the research that I have, that they could possibly put up, it could be really impressive.
Absolutely. Well, let's go there. I think that was one of the announcements, the other announcement from this week, aside from the Hyperledger plugin. And it was really interesting. I had never heard of the Coupon Bureau prior to this announcement. And I don't know much about the company other than the limited research I was able to do this week. But I did pull a number here just from Mance's comments in the town hall yesterday. You know that number?
I think it's going to be 70%.
It's a big number. And he also threw out 250 billion coupons annually.
Yeah. So just to clarify that 70%, he was saying that they have 70% of the online coupons or digital coupons that are used. They have 70% of the market share. And now I'm not sure if that's in the United States, if that's worldwide, how that works, but it's still a big number, right?
Well, absolutely. And they go on, I think Target, and I mean, the companies that are using this are big American companies for the most part, the ones that I saw.
Yeah, well, if it's 70%, it must be a pretty wide swath of, household names.
Absolutely. So we'll talk about network usage a little bit towards the end of the video, but I thought it would be fun, and not for this video, but maybe something we can work on and present in future videos, is just somehow developing a reasonable scenario for the volume that would be required if we take into the use cases just that we know about now, and set aside everything else. Set aside people holding HBAR for speculation or for any other purpose other than just the utility of using the HBAR for the network. And just as I thought it would be interesting, because some of these numbers are so large, and I know there's 50 billion HBAR, and the HBAR required for any given transaction is going to be a fraction of an HBAR. But I think there's some formulas that we could play around with and come up with some sort of reasonable price targets for the future based on supply and how these announcements roll out. And I thought that might be a fun exercise. What do you think?
Yeah, we could certainly play around with that. But just to run through some of the numbers on the Coupon Bureau, I looked at how many actually get redeemed, which is about 31 billion coupons per year. And if you're at 70%, you're around 20 billion. So if you crunch those numbers down, that would allow for about 1,000 transactions per second on the Hedera network. But that's just for redemptions, right? So the origination of those coupons would be a bigger number. And from what I'll try to put a tab showing the 3 steps that the Coupon Bureau has for this service. But there's 3 things for each coupon that's used. Redemption is just one of them. But if you crunch all those numbers down, that would equal about 2 million just for the redemptions, about $2 million of revenue, fee revenue for Hedera annually. It doesn't, this is just one use case. It doesn't take all that much imagination to see how Fundstrat came up with their fee revenue of 1.9 billion, because this is just
saw that,
right?
Yeah, is that by the end of 2022 or when?
2024, I think they were saying.
2024.
So yeah, we certainly have a lot of growing between now and then, but you can see if you get these use cases, these enterprise level use cases going, you can get up to those numbers.
Absolutely, interesting to follow. And here's the announcement. This is published on Ledger Insights, and this goes into some more detail. I would encourage anybody interested to read this article. You won't find a lot. It's just so interesting the way that the crypto media in general almost ignores these announcements, like they don't have the gravity that they really do, which is fine with me.
Sometimes there's clear bias, and then on the other side, a lot of times, these crypto news outlets, they're just learning, right? They're just getting off the ground, so they may not realize what is big news and what isn't. So there's certainly the bias out there, and I covered that in the last bull case. But there's also, they're just learning how to be a journalist in a lot of cases as well.
Sure. All right. Next topic.
Oh, 1 second before we go on. One thing with the Coupon Bureau. So with the fee cost per transaction on Hedera, you're looking at 1/100th of a penny, right? So for a million transactions, you're looking at $100. So you compare that to something like Ethereum, it would cost $150,000 for a million different coupons to go through. It would cost $300,000 for Bitcoin, just because the ratio is about 1,500 to 1 for Ethereum and 3,000 to 1. So the fees just don't allow this kind of use case to be possible on some of the legacy systems.
Right. Especially if it's a lower dollar coupon, it just wouldn't make sense, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's probably the case for a lot of things, not just coupons, but any microtransaction or streaming service or any of these use cases. I suppose that will hold true. Anything else for the Coupon Bureau before we move on here?
No, I think we're good.
All right. This is an interesting topic that has been floating around. And I think they also did discuss this yesterday in the AMA. But there's been a few community members who have been vocal about the seeming lack of on-ramps, specifically here in America. Obviously, it's traded on Binance and Bittrex, and those seem to be the two main ones. And there's a list of, 20-something exchanges, I think?
Yeah, they do have a fair amount, and then they have OTC desks and things like that. And I know Galaxy offers it as well, but that's not your typical exchange. That's more for institutions and things like that. But yeah, there are a lack of U.S. on-ramps, that's for sure.
Yep, and Mance touched on it yesterday, and I thought, I follow a few other projects, and I know that it's been reported at least that there's effort that goes into, especially because it's not a blockchain. Technically, it's a directed acyclic graph, so there's a different type of integration that needs to happen, and so there's cost associated with that. And I know with one of the other projects I follow, there's reports that they had to pay a pretty hefty sum to be listed on Binance. Mm-hmm. Presumably, that money would go towards the development needed to integrate whatever token or coin that might be. So I wonder if we're at the point here where, if that's the case, what's the rush right now? What do you think?
Well, I think it's something people just look forward to, is, the Coinbase bump and things like that from an investment standpoint. But there really is no rush, right? You get your position. If you're dollar cost averaging or using my DIP program or something along those lines, you want the time at these lower prices to be able to acquire more. So there really is no rush. That said, Mance did go into some of the details. I got some questions about it. I followed up a little bit and did some research. So it sounds like, even though there are, platforms like IOTA that are different from blockchain, that Hedera really is unique. It's unique in that being a Byzantine fault tolerant, it really does come to finality, that means we can throw out a lot of the old data, and a lot of the security systems that these exchanges use are built to use that data, right? And so to be able to get that data, they also need to run one of the mirror nodes. So it does take some coaching and some help from whether it's the Hedera team or just more time or trying to figure out exactly how it works to get it integrated. So I do think it's coming, but it might take a little bit more time. But as you said, no rush. Yeah,
I don't see any rush at all. And in fact, sometimes I like to play devil's advocate and put myself in the shoes of Jordan or Lehman or Mance as they're coming to these decisions. And I can't really think of a good business reason why they would want to rush to these exchanges. The only reason to hold HBAR at large, if you're not one of these institutions who's using it for testing, is for speculation. And so while, I'm sure a lot of investors would prefer that it's available on Coinbase specifically, it wouldn't serve any business purpose right now for the average user just to be holding some HBAR, other than, of course, distributing HBAR, which is going to increase security over time. But
sure.
I think that will come with time. It's so early right now. And the Treasury holds most of the tokens, so there's really no threat of a 1/3 attack anytime soon. So
that's all right.
Any final thoughts for any other go-to-market strategy or on-ramp stuff?
Well, I think the one thing is it is different from a lot of other platforms. When they say they want to be the trust layer of the internet, you see that kind of in the Coupon Bureau use case. The only entity that really needs a wallet in that case is the Coupon Bureau, right? Even the retailers don't necessarily need a wallet. They can just pay that $100 for a million coupons, pay that to the Coupon Bureau, and then they take care of everything. The fees would be handled then through the Coupon Bureau. So where you'd expect, if it's going to be a highly used medium of exchange, like some of the other platforms, that you would see a lot more wallets, or there'd be a lot more focus on the wallets. And though I think there will be an economy that builds around that, I mean, of course, they had the proof of concept on micropayments last year. I think that you're going to see a lot less focus on that because the wallets are mainly going to be handled at the enterprise level.
Yeah, and that seems like a great solution, so people don't really have to worry and manage one more thing. They've got enough to worry about, right? So
that's right.
The easier, the better. Frictionless, right?
Yeah, and like I said, I do think that there is going to be huge use cases around micropayments, and Hedera is one of the few platforms where you can truly do micropayments, and that will build over time. But that's not the initial vision. That'll be a side project, not necessarily the trust layer of the internet.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting, because that was a topic even years ago. I remember micropayments. That was it. That was the thing. That was like, the killer app that was going to be micropayments. And there's been a few apps. Tune FM, AdStacks, there's a few apps that are active and that are using it now. So interesting to follow those as well. All right. The final topic here is network usage. And I have to give a shout out to Coinman, the barbarian, for this brilliant meme.
He has some of the greatest, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's so funny.
I like the one with the horse is my favorite from back in December that he put out.
Yep.
I'll put that up on the screen so everybody knows what I'm talking about. But how our investment strategies degraded over time, going from open access till December. I think they're probably getting a little bit more organized at this point, but those first few months were a little rough.
Yeah. Well, this is. I think this is really true here. What we see here, and it's indicative of the volume that we see on the testnet, and now, which I suppose we'll see on the preview net and the testnet. And as these things migrate to the mainnet, this is just sort of what we're talking about here visually. And this is also a chance to just say thanks to Coinman and everyone else who's discussing these things in Telegram and on Twitter, and anyone who feels like they might have something to add to the forum. Everyone's welcome to come on and join us here. Hopefully we'll have a new guest. Not sure how frequent we'll do this. I suppose as the news comes out and warrants, but thanks Coinman and everyone else who's gonna watch this. We hope you can join us as well. So what do you think about network usage in general, Brandon? Any main takeaways there?
Well, one of the things that I've noticed lately, I watch Dragon Glass, and I know we were looking at that the other day. The network usage has increased from about 300,000 transactions per day back in January to over 1 million now. And that puts us well into the top 10. Actually, we are number 3 right now as far as network usage based on that metric. And the one thing when you go, and I'll try to put some screens up to show everybody what we're talking about here, it's the only one in an upward trend, right? We've increased from 300,000 per day up to over 1 million now. That puts us ahead of Bitcoin, Ethereum, puts us ahead of XRP, and it's just getting started. I was talking to one of the team members the other day, and he said that the Coupon Bureau is not doing anything yet, right? So they will start to add their transactions, and of course, there's going to be a lot of other use cases that are going to be adding. But that's the big difference. You look at the other platforms, and they're completely flatlined, pretty much just where they are, where Hedera is going to be adding over time. And it's going to be fun to watch.
Absolutely. And I think if you just look at the companies who have already joined the council and just look at the business they're doing currently, and if you insert the consensus service or otherwise into any little piece of their businesses, just the scale that we're talking about there. One of the interesting cases I saw floating around a while back was Deutsche Telekom and how they settle payments between different providers who might be out of area. So if your cell phone's roaming in your different country or something, how are those payments settled between, say, Sprint and Deutsche Telekom or whoever it might be? And right now that system doesn't seem to be so great based on my research. And so that could be another use case. And so when you think about how often that happens and what that might look like, just that every little use case that I dive into, it seems to be that there's these great big opportunities there for volume on the network. So that's exciting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's going to be cross-pollination, right? Like with this, the Coupon Bureau, the information that they're going to get using the Hashgraph consensus service. Now, they made it clear they don't use any personal information, but they still have the data of, when these coupons went out and when they're getting used and where they're getting used and maybe where they originated from, things like that. Mm-hmm. And how important would that information be for Google to use in their ad services? And that use case, I think we can all see that one as a potential huge one. But yeah, there's going to be the council members and other enterprises that use these platforms. They're going to get ideas and they're going to get information and they're going to get benefits from some of the other use cases that are out there as well.
Absolutely. Well, any final thoughts here as we close this out? We're going to be up against our 30-minute or so timeline here. Any final thoughts for anyone out there?
No, I think we're pretty good. I think as the meme right there was showing, I think there's a lot going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. A lot of us were blindsided by the Google news, and I think there's going to be more stuff like that to come out. And it's going to be a fun year, I think. And next year is going to be the year of growth, kind of as Manson Lehman were alluding to the other day. But yeah, for the pilot episode, I think we're pretty good.
Well, great. Yeah, I had fun. I hope we can do this again. Thanks to everybody who's going to tune into this. We're recording this on a Friday night. It's April 24th, I believe. So look for it tomorrow. And like I said, anybody in the community, anybody on Telegram, if you want to reach out to us, let's see here. Well, I must not have put that slide in, but you can reach us you can reach Brandon at the Monetary Reset. You can reach myself at Hedera Forum on Twitter or at hederaforum@protonmail.com. And I'm Jesse Damrow, just my name, in Telegram. Brandon and I are both admins in the main Hedera Hashgraph community chat. And I suppose we should mention Brandon and I are not affiliated with Hedera in any way. This is just a community talking. And yeah, so we hope to talk to you again soon. Thanks, Brandon.
Thanks, Jesse. Thanks for putting it together. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
Bye.